Okay, well then we will make a start. Welcome everybody to our briefing on the new National Leaders of Governance programme. My name's Emma Bolchin and I am Director of Professional Development and an NLG actually, at least until the end of August. And I will be talking to you this evening with my colleague Claire Collins, who is our Head of Consultancy, and will also be our quality assurance lead for the new NLG programme. And we've also got Charlotte Harding on the call this evening, and she will be beavering away because we've got 150 or so of you on the briefing this evening. We are going to encourage you to use the chat function and ask all of your questions until we get to the Q&A slot through that mechanism, if you would. And Charlotte will try and answer as many of them as she can as we go along. And then when we get to Q&A at the end, Claire and I can pick up some key ones that have been raised. And if you've got any outstanding ones as well, we will do that. After today, we will have done 2 of the briefings and a third one for a different audience. And we're going to take all of those questions and produce a frequently asked questions document, which we will circulate to you along with the link to the video of the briefing. So don't panic if you don't catch everything the first time around. You can always watch it again, and obviously we'll answer all of those questions that don't get answered. Hopefully we'll do most of them in the session tonight, but if we don't, we will answer them and get them sent out as soon as we can, hopefully by the end of the week or the beginning of next. If I could ask everybody to please be on mute, because obviously with 150 of you, it's going to get pretty distracting if there's background noise. So that would be really helpful too. Okay, right. So having introduced the team that are here with me this evening very briefly, that's me and Claire. I'm just going to start with a brief introduction. And I suppose this first slide with Baroness Berridge talking about, I suppose, the increased profile of NLGs and governance. And I suppose we welcome this really because it represents the fact that this support service is now, I suppose, on a par with the national leaders of education and other school-to-school support mechanisms. So it's part of that programme and is being considered in the same vein and run alongside to that. This is our own CEO at NGA, Emma Knights, who is really thanking all of those NLGs since 2012 for all of their huge efforts in the vast amount of support that they have provided to schools and governance, and also encouraging those of you that have been supporting schools, whether it's as an NLG or whether it's in a different capacity, to really consider applying for the roles that we're going to share with you this evening. Okay, so this is just a bit of the benefits of the programme. So we know that NLGs have been impacting education and wellbeing of children and young people by improving governance. And the new programme will be directed to those schools or trusts which need it most. We hope that the status will be some well-deserved recognition of the skills, experience and credibility those governing or supporting governance have developed through their dedication. And also, we hope that we'll be an influential team, so we continue to lobby the department, and obviously we'll have all of your views and voices added to that pot. And also that you will think that the role offers some credibility and flexibility because you'll be able to do it either on a self-employed basis or through your employer. So actually, hopefully it can meet a variety of different needs while still benefiting from training, support and quality assurance from the team back at the ranch. So some key differences for you are that NLGs will be paid. So it will be funded by the Department for Education. And as a result of that, the scope of the role has changed. So the ITT required that much of the work will be about funded external reviews of governance, again, in those schools or trusts where it is most needed. So the DfE's regional delivery directorates, which is where the regional schools commissioners sit, local authorities or dioceses will be able to refer eligible trusts, academies and schools into the programme for those funded reviews. And we hope to begin those reviews or deployments, if you like, from October 2021. That's not obviously very long from now, hence our application window opened on the 30th of June. And we need to recruit and train at least 50 NLGs in readiness for that October start point. So we have all crossed, and I suppose I should say at this point, although I think it is on a later slide, that this won't be the only opportunity whereby you have the chance to apply for this opportunity. Okay. I just wanted to take a brief moment to say that we absolutely recognise all of the other things that national leaders of governance have been undertaking, and also the other support that the system needs and values outside of external reviews of governance. We recognise the value of skilled coaching and mentoring, that NLGs have chaired IEBs and done all sorts of other things outside of just reviews. And so we know that those of you who can offer this kind of support, well, we hope actually that you will continue to do that, because the system needs it. If governance is to keep getting better everywhere, then we absolutely want that to happen. So we are continuing to lobby the Department for Education for this kind of work to be properly recognised, whilst in full knowledge that it isn't covered within the scope of what we've been asked to do with regard to the NLG programme going forward. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Claire, who's going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about the role specifically. Thanks, Claire.
Okay, I mean, that was already said that NLGs will mainly be carrying out external reviews of governance of schools and trusts. And these reviews will include a follow-up progress review. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on in this slide set about the shape of those reviews and the timing of them, more detail about how they'll actually happen. But what will happen is that trusts that meet the eligibility criteria will be referred by, we've all got a new acronym to get used to, RDDs, Regional Delivery Directorates. And obviously the RSCs will feed into those RDDs where they have concerns and where they think that they have a trust which meets the eligibility criteria. And crucially, if we think the eligibility criteria, because that hasn't been confirmed yet, will refer to how effective schools in the trust are. But we don't know whether that will be, what level will trigger that concern. But if it's a school in a trust, it will trigger a review of the whole trust. So it's more than that LGB. It will be looking at the trust board and governance right across the trust. Maintained schools, there will also be eligibility criteria for them to meet before they can request a funded review. They will be referred by local authorities and dioceses. So it's a very different model to last time, and this links back to the work that was done in that advisory group, which resulted in the report, which many of you have seen. And then what will happen is that NLGs will be designated to carry out reviews in either maintained schools or trusts or both. So it's just because you're an NLG doesn't mean to say that you can do both. You will be designated according to your knowledge, experience and track record in one or other or both. And that's, we'll talk about that a little bit more in terms of the application form and the case studies later on. So having that knowledge and experience in the right sector is absolutely critical. Next slide, please, Emma. So the $64 million question is who can apply, and basically anyone who meets the eligibility criteria. can apply, but the eligibility criteria has been set. I should say this is eligibility to be an NLG, not to qualify for a review. But if anyone's got any concerns about the robustness of that criteria, it's been set by the DFE. It has not been set by NGA. But what we think is that it does allow experienced chairs, experienced governors, experienced trustees, current NLGs, those who are already doing governance consultancy work, so long as they also have experience of being a chair of a school or a trust. And really, really welcome is the introduction of clerks and governance professionals being able to apply. So if you fit into any of those categories, have a careful look, and Emma's going to go through them in the next couple of slides through the eligibility criteria. And you will be eligible to put your hat in the ring, as it were. So we are conducting this recruitment round now under a certain amount of pressure because the DFE wants the programme to start in October. We do anticipate that there'll be further recruitment rounds, but we've got to get over this initial start point first. Back to you, Emma.
Thanks, Claire. So the eligibility criteria states that you need to have a minimum of 5 years school or trust board governance experience, or as a trust experience. That's either as a governor or as a governance professional, be it a clerk or other role within that governance field, as well as a current role within governance that involves holding the executive to account or supporting the board in a professional capacity. We need you to have experience as a trustee, governor or governance professional in at least 2 distinct settings, and one of those must be an education setting. So whether that's a maintained school governing board or whether it's an academy trust board, and one of those, again, a welcome change, can be a non-education setting. So actually, if you've been a trustee within a charity or a different sector, then that's one of those things that is really welcome, because we've seen the sort of, I suppose, the difference it can make to having some of those other skills and transferable experiences to bring to the support role. In addition to that, there is also some other criteria whereby you just need to meet one of these. So the previous slide is all of them, but this is just one of them. And actually, what's nice is there has been a move away from only accepting chairs of good or outstanding schools according to Ofsted's judgments. So we're really pleased now that, as well as that, and not being subject to a financial notice to improve or any other warning notices, etc., it's also acceptable if you have been working in special measures or requires improvement settings, and you've got a track record of improving governance. So that might be as a governor as well as in one of those support consultancy type roles. And then the bottom one there is the same thing as an alternative for those governance professionals. So if you've got a record of providing effective professional services and you've challenged and delivered improved governance in schools or trusts, it does say here, from an Ofsted judgment as evidence or an other objective measure. And I suppose what I want to say here is that we absolutely understand that this can be a real challenge to find this evidence in quantitative terms, which is why we've put on this slide actually for bullet 2 and bullet 3, it's applicable, that it can be qualitative examples of positive change. So please do feel free to tell us the story of what it is that's different and how it's better. We understand that sometimes it isn't always about numbers. It's not always that there's an Ofsted, especially in the current times. It's not always that there's been an Ofsted inspection whereby you've got that tangible improvement on paper ratified by an external body. So please do be creative, and we are willing to be flexible with those examples as long as we feel as though that is some objectivity in terms of positive difference made. Okay, thanks Claire, back to you in terms of the process.
Okay, so I'm sure that many of you will already have looked at the documents that you need to complete to apply to become an NLG under the new programme. And just to clarify, the previous NLG designations will all end this summer. So unfortunately, those of you who decide not to apply for the new designation, you will not be able to continue using your old designation. So and again, that's not down to us, that's down to the DfE. If you want to take up the new designation, if you want to apply, then you're going to have to fill in the formal application form, which is downloadable from our website. And that is but designed to evidence your background and experience. And so we're looking for that information there for us to be able to see that you meet the eligibility criteria. Now, you will also have to complete 2 case studies, which are going to evidence your track record of improving governance. And I'm going to say a little bit about that in a moment, a little bit more about that, because people are asking a lot of questions about that. You will be required to provide referees, and that's about your current roles. But again, I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment. You'll also be required to undertake an interview, which will include a presentation. And it will be at this interview that you'll have the opportunity to demonstrate the depth and breadth of your experience. So many people have said, I've done lots and lots of work. How do I choose which pieces of work that I use as my case study? And we are just saying, you're going to have to make a choice. But if you get selected for interview, then that's when we want to hear about the other stuff as well. The DfE were absolutely clear that they wanted us to make sure that the whole process is moderated, and we're delighted that the Association of Education Advisors have agreed to act as our moderators. And they've already, well, they looked from the very start, they've been looking at our process, our documentation, the way that we're going to score applicants, and the way that then we're going to interview. They'll be there checking all the way, and there will be certain applicants who will particularly have to be moderated, which I'll say a bit more in a minute. Next slide, please. So on the application form is designed to be so that we can run a blind process. So you'll notice from that part 1 of the form, there's no names, your actual name, address, that information isn't there. It's all in part 2. And so that part will be separated, and the information on it will be entered onto a spreadsheet with just a number against it. Now, people have asked about confidentiality. People don't want it to be known for absolutely understandable reasons. The information that we get will be entirely confidential between us, and that, we as with any good HR process, we're going to stick to that. Your governance roles, which is part 3 of the application form, lots of people have been asking about this. The first role, you'll notice there's 2 columns. The first column, you need to report your current role. Now, many people in the governance world are undertaking 2 or more roles. We hope they're not doing too many, because you'll be spread very thin. But that first column should be one of your current roles, and we would prefer it if you pick the one which best supports the eligibility criteria. And then if you have, say, 3 roles, the second column needs to record one of the others. And again, it will be your choice which one of the others you put in that second column, because those 2 we need referees for, which is why people have been asking where we've put about the references, and whether these about the case studies are about your roles. They're about your roles, which is why on those columns at the bottom, it's where you put your referees, the details for those. So just for those 2 roles. Now, if you have additional roles, or you have held additional roles in the past, and many in the governance have, and I mean, for example, I think when I did my last ad, I've done 8 or 9 roles. I'm afraid you're going to have to fill in details of all the roles you've taken on the table below, copying and pasting it as many times as necessary. And it's there, you'll notice that we need to understand whether you have ever been named in an FNTI, that's a financial notice to improve from the Education and Skills Funding Agency. So it's about using that second table, copy and paste, and record if you've ever been named on an FNTI or an Ofsted report. Now, we do completely understand, and I've seen that there's a question in the chat about if you have been named as a chair, and it certainly happened to me, but you very recently took that role up, and it was just that Ofsted came in before you had actually started to make a difference. And what what is really good is to say, I was put in here, I was named, but then we came out of that category within whatever time scale it was. So that's evidence that you have, hopefully it's been popped down to you to make a difference. So folks, I hope that makes sense. Can we move on, please, Emma? The next one is about the case studies. And again, we've had lots of questions about the case studies. And again, people are saying, how do I choose which two? It's up to you. This is a standard way of dealing with how to tease out from potential applicants some evidence of the work that they've undertaken. So what we're looking for is for you to tell us the story behind two pieces of work. It doesn't necessarily need to be paid work. It could be if you've been the chair of a trust or a school where your role has made a difference there. So it's not just about paid work, it's about where you've gone into a situation and you can really evidence the fact that you have led positive change, which has led to stronger governance. And this is the really difficult part, because yes, it can lead to stronger governance, but there must have been change which benefits the pupils. And that benefit can be in terms of their standards, but sometimes it's also about a more sustainable organisation. So for example, it might be about the finances. And so what you've done is got those knocked into shape. So instead of it being a school or a trust with an unsustainable budget, in fact, it's in a strong position going forward. You do not need to name the school or trusts that you've worked with. Where it says school or trust, that's because we need to know if it is a school or if it is a trust. We'd like to know a little bit about the context, how big it was, if it was in a challenging area, if it was urban, rural, whatever. So just a little bit of, you haven't got much space because we're anticipating a load of applications, and we're very optimistic that people will want to apply. And we certainly hope that they do. And so we need it to be succinct so that we can read them all and then use them to score against our criteria. And as I said before, you will have the opportunity to talk more about the work that you have done at interview. So next slide. Before you're designated, you might have got through the application process, you might have got through the interview process, but we also have to make sure that you're up to speed with the expectations of how you're going to work with us as an NLG in the new programme. So it's a requirement, the DfE made it a requirement that we have to provide training, and that NLGs will have to undertake the training before they can be given their first deployment. So the way we've planned it out is that there'll be a short session on the administration process. Somebody asked a question about how much paperwork there will be. There will be paperwork, I'm afraid, because this is public money and we need to make sure that it's been spent well and that the work you're doing is going to make a difference. So there will be administration of how the work is referred to you, what audit trails we need in terms of assignment reports, but we'll also need for you to understand how to invoice us, etc. and how work will be allocated. We'll also then do some work as well with you on 2 longer sessions. So those sessions will amount to a day, but because we're going to have to do them remotely, we'll split them into 2 sessions. And we're going to talk about governance policy, best practice, about how our review frameworks work, about the templates we'll be asking you to use, about the sort of data we want to have submitted, and then also how we get feedback from you, from our clients, and how we're going to use that for quality assurance purposes. So I hope that that's reassuring, that there'll be plenty of support out there for you from NGA headquarters. Okay, next slide.
Okay, thanks, Claire. So NLGs will be contracted to NGA either directly if you are self-employed, or through your employer if you work through a company. And there's a daily rate that's been set of £500 that will be paid to you. Now, that £500 includes travel up to 100 miles. So if we ask you to go further, then you'll be able to claim mileage from the department through us. At the moment, it's 45 pence per mile, but it will be whatever their kind of current policy is at any given time around travel expenses. What I should say here is, if you don't want to travel further than 100 miles, if we have to ask you to do that because of your area or field of expertise, you are absolutely within your rights to say, I don't want that piece of work. So you certainly have some choice over the assignments that you accept and decline, and all of those things, which is one of the things that we were asked at the last session when this slide came up. VAT can be charged if you're VAT registered, and the role is IR35 compliant. So I know we also had lots of questions about that previously too. NLGs will be managed, if you like, by NGA, and that involves an annual conversation and also ongoing quality assurance throughout the role. But hopefully people see that as supportive. It's an opportunity to talk about the kind of numbers of assignments that you want to do, and how they've been going and the difference that you've been making. A set number of days have been allocated for the different types of review. So single school or single trust reviews have 3 days worth of work assigned to them, and a MAT review has 5 days worth of work. The ESFA required reviews have got up to 10 days allocated, and that's a bit of a pilot project that's running alongside some of the other work as well, which will be quite exciting for us to engage with. The number of reviews that you undertake for us per year is negotiated with each of you as individuals, each of the successful NLGs, but probably anywhere between 5 and 10 over the course of a 12-month period, which could be, if you're doing maintained reviews only, as little as 15 days worth of work, or if it is the MAT reviews, it could be anything beyond 50 days plus for a year. We will provide all of the templates for reports and reviews. Obviously, we talked already a little bit about quality assurance and moderation. That will be ongoing throughout the process. And also there will be an assessment of the effectiveness of the reviews. And we will be doing checks regarding that, because the department have asked us to feedback around that as well. The deployment process. So the regional delivery directorates, RDDs, which the regional schools commissioners are a big part, will refer trusts or academies that are in need of support, and local authorities or dioceses will refer schools who meet the eligibility criteria for the funded reviews. We will match NLGs that are most appropriate to the assignment, and this was a big part of the process, really. So you'll note that the forms ask about your areas of expertise, and we are looking for as wide and broad a field as we possibly can. So particularly faith settings and people with experience of that will be welcomed. We need a significant cohort of people who are experienced in trust governance. Slightly smaller numbers, but still people who have expertise in the maintained sector. Special educational needs has been a field as well that we are keen to recruit expertise in, amongst many other areas and kind of specialisms, if you like. So please do let us know what you do outside of your governance role. So we want to know about your day job too, because that might be really supportive in terms of a particular field that we are looking to fill. The programme team will contact each NLG with details of the deployment, and the NLG will kind of be fairly self-sufficient once that handover has happened. There are particular timescales. So once we have received a referral into the programme, we need to match an NLG with that setting within a week, and then you will have a further 2 weeks to make contact with the setting, be it a school or trust, and begin that deployment, if you like. The other timescales to be aware of are that we are allowing a 12-week period for the review to be conducted within. Obviously, it doesn't have to take 12 weeks, but we are really keen that one of the elements of the review is that you see a board in action. And we're aware that it could take up to 12 weeks with diary negotiation, etc., for you to manage to get to one of those, be it physically or virtually. So that's built in. And then beyond that 12 weeks, or whatever point you complete the review, there will be a requirement to do a progress review, and that will be 3 months later. So there will be a quality assurance process we've talked about. So the first report will be quality assured that every NLG undertakes. And then thereon, we will use a risk-based approach to quality assurance alongside a particular number that we need to do in terms of meeting the expectations set by the department. So by risk, I guess that could mean high profile reviews that have perhaps had significant media coverage. It could mean you have asked us for additional support as an NLG. You're doing something that's a bit different. It's perhaps something that we haven't covered before in terms of expertise, etc. So there's all sorts of reasons and ways in which that extra support might be put in at any given time. Okay, Claire, back to you for ongoing support.
Okay, so again, the DfE have required us to make sure that there is ongoing support for the team, the NLG team, and so we will be putting in place, we're in the process of putting in place a team at NGA headquarters, which will manage the whole NLG program. There will be dedicated email addresses and phone numbers so that you can get through to without going through all those horrible options on the phone. But there's also, of course, the opportunity to access the depth and breadth of experience and expertise that we've got in the organisation. And we see that as something that we hope will be really helpful. We are giving every NLG access to all the Learning Link modules, some of which we hope you will find really useful, and that it will be a way of you checking out which ones might be best recommended to clients. We're required to, NLGs are required to undertake annual CPD, and we will arrange that so that it depends whether we have to do it still virtually or face-to-face, but it will be the equivalent of a day's CPD per year. But we will also be having termly keeping in touch sessions, which will probably be webinars, and anything else. As we get into the programme, if we feel that we need more to keep everybody up to speed, that's been one of the beauties of the very, very few beauties of the pandemic, is that we've broken through this digital barrier, and it's being able to run events like this easily and quickly, and everyone being confident that they can join, means that we can be much, much more responsive. So I think that's us, isn't it, Emma? Are we on to Q&A now?
I think we are. Let's just move on to the slide. I will put up the last couple of slides as well, so that you are able to see our web address in case you haven't already visited it, where there is further information or the same information but you can go through at your leisure. Also our inquiry email and the application email as well. So when you've completed the 3 documents, the email address that you need to submit those to is on this screen too. But otherwise, we will pick up some of the questions. First of all, if I could ask Charlotte, who's been beavering away on the chat, to perhaps give us a summary, or maybe just some highlights that Claire and I could reiterate verbally, as well as, I know it's difficult sometimes if you're listening to read previous questions, so perhaps.
Can I just interject, Emma, and answer a question about IR35? You will not be employed if you're an NLG. You will not be employed by NGA. You'll be engaged to undertake a certain number of assignments per year, which is when we say And I absolutely appreciate the points being made about whether you're inside or outside IR35, and it's probably down to us to use more exact language. But as you will not be employed by us, you'll be available for work for other people. You will not be provided with the usual things that go with employment status. The DfE have said that you will sit outside IR35, and so any arrangements that you need to make according to that will be down to you. And the contract that you will have as an NLG with NGA will be a contract of engagement rather than a contract of employment, as it were. It all sounds a bit sort of nitpicky, but we understand that we need to be clear about this. Okay, so Charlotte, anything to throw at us before I go down the little list I've made?
Hi, yes. So some trends in questions, if you just, I think, want to reiterate something that possibly we have talked about, but in a little bit more detail, about the sort of consultation process of NLGs and talking to people about the deployment. So I've had a few questions about, can I say no? What happens if I've got a conflict of interest, etc. So something a little bit about the matching process, I suppose.
Well, we will when we offer the designation. Part of that, we will have been recording what's come through your application and your interview about areas of specialism or whatever. One of the things that came up in the previous information session was about specialism. We are, I mean, Emma's already said this, but we are very interested. The DfE want us to have governors and trustees and governance professionals who have worked particularly in faith sector schools and trusts. But also if, for example, special schools, and if you've got, because there are likely to be some ESFA required reviews, so financial backgrounds, financial confidence, we would like to know about those. And there is a space at the top of the part 1 of the form for you to record that. So absolutely, that's something that we want, and we will try and match people to their interest and their specialism. And that's, I mean, that's how we run our consultancy at the moment. People also want to branch out, and as they get more confident with just the basic process, if they feel they can take something on with maybe a little bit more input from us, then we would be hopeful that they will do that. But within that confines at the beginning, you are going to have to show whether you've got maintained or trust experience so that we can allocate that way.
Great, thank you. So also a little bit about, I think going back to what we talked about at the beginning about the work that would go on outside of the ERGs, and the work that NLGs or other governance professionals might have already had in place, relationships with local authorities, dioceses, working alongside that. Again, to sort of reiterate how that would continue and the fact that we would, you know, support that.
Yeah, I think that you know, we absolutely hope that that continues, but it isn't, in a way, it's not part of the NLG programme going forward. The reform group did make recommendations about that, and we continue to lobby the department that this is something that needs consideration and facilitation, if you like. But actually, it will be down to those key individuals that have been working in this way already, and the partners that they've been working with and those established relationships, to make sure that that support still continues to happen within the system. And I'm confident that it will, because those relationships are established and built. But it does fall outside, unfortunately, the scope of this project. So NGA are committed as an organisation to lobbying the department and trying to raise the profile and value of all of that work that happens, in order that governance improves everywhere. I think that in particular, it's worth bearing in mind there is a limited amount in the DfE pot. So this will only ever go as far as that money allows. And actually, historically, people have either volunteered or settings have funded reviews for themselves alongside all of that other sort of support. And I suppose it's envisaged that that will still continue alongside this, because good and outstanding settings, which may or may not form part of the eligibility criteria for various reasons, you know, they're going to be encouraged in the ATH, the Academy's Trust Handbook, etc. They're going to be encouraged to do a regular annual external review alongside some of those other sort of pieces of support work, if you like, and they're unlikely to be included. Certainly there isn't funding for every setting to have support through the project as well, so it will need to carry on, be it through a governance consultancy capacity, be it through a voluntary capacity, and so on. But I don't know, Claire, is there anything you want to add to that at all?
No, I think, I mean, it's something which is, this program is so different from the previous one, is that we're going to have to an extent, see how things pan out and see, how things pan out. I think there seems to be questions coming, quite a lot of questions about how the work will be split. So the 3 days that we said, if it's a maintained school, 3 days is allowed. If it's a trust, it will be 5 days. And how much of that will report writing fall within that time? How much time is on the review and how much is on the progress? Report writing does fall within that time. And I think that when we worked out how it would work, is that it's about half a day allowed for that report writing, because given what other work you're going to have to do in order to assess what you're going to put in your report. So you're going to have to do document reviews, and then a load of findings, make recommendations, and then record it in your report. So the rough split is that there'll be a day for the progress review, maybe not even a whole day if it's a maintained school, because this is a progress review. It's not another external review. It's, what plan did you come up with? How far are you getting on with it? What difference is it making? And can we report on that? But we will give you templates to work to on that. So we try and keep the work as efficient and effective as possible. It needs to be really focused to get the best value out of your time, because your time is what's most precious. So I hope that sort of clarifies a little bit about how that split works. I mean, inevitably, some people are much quicker at writing reports than others, but there will be part of our quality assurance will be to make sure that the reports are well written. So the standard of written English is going to matter, because they've got to be credible to a wide audience. And that audience could include Ofsted, it could include the Commissioner, it could include all sorts of people. So it's got to be a well-written report. The findings have got to be evidenced. So if we're sort of saying serious things about whether a board is doing X, Y, and Z, there needs to be the evidence there, quoted from minutes or documents or interviews or whatever, or an observation. And then the recommendations obviously will need to link to those findings. And then we will expect that there will be, if you like, an overall assessment of effectiveness. So, I mean, this is the tough bit, because none of us like delivering tough messages, but what we have plenty of experience of is doing that in as nice a way as possible, because if a message needs to be got through, that is a little bit difficult, but it's going to make a difference to the outcomes of the pupils in that school or trust, then we have got to deliver that message. So I hope that puts a bit of colour onto how all of that process will work.
Yeah, one of the things that that brought to mind as well, Claire, is that the department have said there is scope following a review for us to negotiate, or for the Commissioner to negotiate, depending on whether it's a local authority or a regional delivery directorate, if follow-up work is required, and for that to be carried out by the NLG potentially that has conducted the review, or other NLG with the requisite skills and experience. So whilst the mainstay of this role is about external reviews, and certainly that's what the vast majority of the budget has been set aside for in terms of the department's allocation, they aren't a closed door in terms of some of those softer skills of coaching, mentoring, and all of those things that we talked about initially being part of the programme. But they have been clear that however much of that support, if you like, or work gets negotiated beyond the advisory role, actually, I suppose then it limits the number of reviews that can happen because it's the same pot of funding and they've divided it by the number of schools they envisage us being able to support over the course of the programme. But just that I suppose to highlight that there is that option available as well. Charlotte,
just picking up, I was just going to say about the case studies. I've spotted a few questions about the case studies and whether they're about your difference you've made in your governance role or a difference that you've made in some governance work. And that's up to you to choose. If you've done both, you might choose to do one which is about your role that you made a difference and one about the work that you've done that make a difference, but you might actually choose to do both about your work. But I'm afraid we can't help any more than that to say that you need to choose which will best evidence that you have the ability to effect positive change in that governance setting. So I hope that's helpful. There's also been quite a, there's been some talk about whether all external reviews will be carried out by NLGs, and I think we've covered that now to say that they won't be. It will only be ones which meet the eligibility criteria. The DfE, the government, does not have a bottomless pit of money which they are going to spend on funding external reviews, and actually, you know, we wouldn't want them to. But also, so then can you as an NLG carry out external reviews in where it hasn't been commissioned? And you won't be able to. You'll only be able to use your designation where it is work that has been commissioned through this process. But inevitably, people will know that you're an NLG and might want you to do work, in which case you could, you know, there will be two choices about how you, well, there will be choices about how you do that and whether you set yourself up as an independent as well alongside this.
Yeah, just to add to that, Claire, we are able through this process to be commissioned by other settings. So maintained settings or trusts are able to commission NLGs to do reviews. So anybody can come through this process, but the department work has to take priority. So we certainly can accept commissions from other areas and from other settings. And again, they can happen alongside the numbers that we're required to do for the department. But I suppose as long as we've got capacity within our NLG team to be able to offer that.
Okay, Charlotte.
Okay, one more very specific question about training and support. If this is the, or if somebody's successful and goes on their first ERG, is there any possibility of having a shadowing, you know, sort of support structure at the beginning to show you how you'd go about it?
There won't be, and I think that this links back to a question that we had in the first session as well, about whether you'll be paid for the training. You won't be paid for the training, I'm afraid. That wasn't part of the DfE's offer, basically. And so if you wanted to do that shadowing, you would need to arrange that with colleagues that you have, if you like, hopefully you will have built up your network through the way that we conduct our induction and training sessions at the beginning, and we will be encouraging that to happen. And because there's also been questions about whether people can work in groups and the rest of it. But you know, there will be a set fee for an external review. If two of you do it, you'll have to split that fee, or what you'll have to have an arrangement between you. And we will need to know who is the responsible person for that review as well, because that's how the quality assurance and everything will cut in on that. Okay.
Thank you. I think that was pretty much everything we've got sort of trending wise. As far as I can see.
Some hands up, see if anyone wants to ask us a direct question. We're going to attempt to be able to see who's got their hand up if anyone wants to ask us anything.
Sue Garner.
Yeah, hi. I did put it in chat, but I realise the chat is very busy. I just wanted to check, because you've talked about the eligibility criteria, but I just wanted to check. I know with some MATs and academies, if you're a local councillor, you cannot be a chair of governors. So as a local councillor, would I still be eligible to apply for this?
So when you say you can't be a chair, you're a local councillor of the local authority council?
Yeah, so well, I'm a town councillor, but I am chair of a maintained school, but not in this area, not in my local authority. So that's absolutely okay. But I understand with a lot of the academy rules, I can still be a governor, but I couldn't be a chair of governors. So again, because all of that is wrapped up in, you know, being a town councillor currently, I just want to check whether that would disqualify me from applying for this.
I think that the thing is that if you're a governor in a trust, it means you're not a trustee. Are you a trustee in the trust?
No.
No, you've got to be a trustee for it to be to meet the eligibility criteria, because the local governing body in a trust, and actually this is a question I made a note of and I haven't answered, is if you're on a local governing body in a trust, that doesn't count because that's not the accountable body. So you'll notice in the eligibility criteria, it says it has to be the accountable, which is holding the executive to account, and that local governing body isn't finally responsible for that, it's the trust board. So, but I think what you're talking about, Sue, is where there's, what's it called, Emma? It's local authority influence, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I would have thought that town council isn't the local authority.
No.
I would have thought that isn't, but we would have to check that out.
Okay, lovely. And yes, I understand about the trust. I'm actually a chair of governors at a maintained school as well. So
that counts, but that would that would give you a one role. Yeah.
But then I think on the town council is another role, isn't it, outside of an educational setting? So I would say that you do meet the eligibility criteria.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that we've experienced this with our own trustees, is people who've been trustees or in accountability roles in other sectors are, often know an awful lot about governance and have, a really nice broad experience of, because in most sectors, the three core functions are more or less the same.
Yes.
That's what we're looking to understand about that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And Gadsden, I'm coming to you next, if that's okay.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just to say, if one was successful, how long does the designation last for?
So the designation is still provided by the DFE, and it's around 3 years. Obviously, we are doing kind of annual conversations and have more regular touch points than that. But yeah, it's kind of, and it's in theory, it's a 2-year program initially with the potential to extend to 4 years. So kind of how that fits and where we're at, sort of, if it does extend or if it doesn't go beyond the 2 years, then I guess we'll kind of review it at that point. Does that help?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie Waller.
Thank you. Thank you. I think actually that the eligibility criteria may have made my question for me a bit pointless, because I'm chair of an LGB, but an LGB that grew out of a sort of IEB that I started off when the school was in special measures, and it's now absolutely not. And I've been heavily involved in the trust more broadly, so I need to look at the detail. But the question around that, if I do look at the detail and think I am still eligible, is you've mentioned a couple of times future rounds, and given the sort of speediness of this round, I wondered if you had any idea of when they might be, because that might be helpful.
Yeah. I think that, Maggie, it's difficult to put a time scale on it, because I think it depends how we get on in this round one. So I think it depends on the breadth of the skills and expertise that we recruit, and certainly the numbers. So we've mentioned a minimum of 50. It might be that we're able, depending on our applications, that we're able to recruit more than that. So I suppose it will be on a needs basis. So it could be that we need to do further recruitment rounds in particular regions, because we've had indications of numbers by region of eligible settings. that the department and regional delivery directorates might highlight. So it's really difficult to say for sure when, but we are quite confident, just because of turnover of our own consultant field, really, that we probably will need to run a further recruitment round, whether it will be in year 1 or whether it will be at the start of year 2 or in readiness for the start of year 2. I'd be reluctant to say, because it depends how that first cohort, if you like, goes.
Thank you. That's
I think it's safe to say it's unlikely to be this year. We'll be, if we get up and running by October. Well, who's to say? But yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm coming to you, Denise Kendall, now.
Hello. Yes, I just wanted to check. I've become slightly confused about the eligibility criteria. I am currently chair of 2 local governing committees of 2 separate trusts. One of the local governing committees, that's what we call them within our sector, the faith sector, is I was originally a trustee within that trust, but then once things were developing, that obviously becomes a conflict of interest. And so I'm a former trustee and chose to remain as chair of the local governing committee. When I then moved, the diocese asked me to move to another trust, but I've become just a trustee there as well. Will I be eligible?
So as a trustee, Denise, you are eligible. As a governor at local level, because that's not an accountable body, that doesn't meet the eligibility criteria, if that makes sense.
It does, but but am I able to use the experience that I had as a former trustee?
Yes.
And as a chair of a local governing body that became a local governing committee, in terms of my experience to form part of my case study? I know I've got to select my case studies, but does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. Claire, do you want to say a little bit more about using those for case studies? I mean, for me, that sounds sensible, and as though.
Yeah, no, it's but this whole business about local governing bodies, and somebody's put on the chat that it depends what the scheme of delegation is. Even if the scheme of delegation gives decision-making powers to the local governing body, those decisions are made in the name of the trust board. Trust board. So that's what. But if you've got that experience and you've used it to good effect, then that would make a case study.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
In terms of the case studies, it doesn't have to be something recent. I mean, I had to do a case study recently of something which happened actually a few years ago, but it was, if you like, it made such a phenomenal difference. It was so difficult to do, but it made that big difference. It's sort of still up there in my examples of things that have made a difference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. I'm going to come to, is it Jay Cahill now? You're my last hand up, and we're drawing to 6:30, so this is going to be
I'll be quick.
Our last question. Thanks, Jonah, we'll take it.
Mine carries on really with case studies. Can the case study be ongoing? It's proved very beneficial, and we've made fantastic changes already, which have been very positive. And I've got future plans to monopolise on it and push it forward. Can I use that? Give an example of how it will be progressed?
You can use it as an example of how it will be progressed, but unless you've got evidence that it's already made a difference,
yes,
because none of us can see the future. But yeah, no, I mean, exactly. If it,
great,
if you're on the upward trajectory and you've got you've still got a way to go. That's part of the story. So yes,
on a mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, right, everybody. So that's all from us, really. We hope you continue to submit questions if you've got them after this. Do wait till the FAQs come out if you've submitted them in the chat. As I said at the beginning, we are going to seek to answer all of those questions, probably group a few together and kind of give further guidance and thoughts on different matters. But we really do hope that you will kind of take the plunge and submit an application. And I suppose we want to wish you the best of luck. And it's been an absolute pleasure this evening. Really good to see so many of you coming to find out a bit more about it. And thank you very much for engaging with us and all of your questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.